I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and are you looking to improve both the function and look of the hose clamps in your engine bay? Let me show you how. Alright y'all, so let's talk about this project a little bit before we do it and the reasons why you might want to do this yourself. Now, I recently had my BMW M2C on the dyno, and it was a long day with a lot of tuning, and about halfway through that whole day, I thought I blew my motor. It was bad. There was this horrendous bang, we shut everything down, and I really thought, well, there went my motor. But I got really lucky. Now in my car, I've got two charge pipes that come up from the turbos into the intake. And I got really lucky, and that bang sound was the sound of one of my hose clamps slipping and my charge pipe coming out of the rubber boot. So no harm done, nothing bad. It was a quick and easy fix, and we were back on the dyno and getting the work done. But I was like, that is never going to happen again. So I went out and started looking for improved hose clamps. And what is such a simple thing, right? I mean, hose clamps are such a ubiquitous part that we all have in our cars, and they're really pretty generic with those little worm drives and the whole 9 yards. I wanted something better and stronger, and along the way, I found a way to make them look even better. So I found Phase 2 Motortrends. They make really good hose clamps. I'll have it out of the bag here in just a second, but they make really good hose clamps that are full band hose clamps, and they come in colors. So the blue theme that I have throughout all the accessories in my motor that goes along with the interior, I now have blue hose clamps to go with it. So I talked to Phase 2, and I used a caliper. So make sure to check in the comments of the video. I have a digital caliper that I use to measure the actual diameter of all the pipes involved. So I measured all of my hose clamps, the 4 that go on my 2 intake pipes, and 1 each on each of my air intakes, and ordered from Phase 2. Was able to get these clamps, and I want to show you how to install them. Now this instruction is going to work on really any F80 car, so that's the M2C, M3, M4. But really, when it comes down to it, the process is exactly the same for your specific car. You're going to want to measure, order, and then install. But let me walk you through what it would be like here on my M2. All right, so it may be possible to do this work with the strut bar out, but I'm going to do so in this case not only to make it a little more obvious on what we're doing, but a little bit easier to get to. So if you find a way to do this without removing the strut bar, that's fantastic. It's just going to be a lot tighter space to work with. But in removing the strut bar, the very first thing you want to do is take off these upper plastic covers. So you're going to pull out the plastic pin on the corner right there and pull that expanding rivet out. And then you've got quarter turn 10mm plastic nuts across the top. So quarter turn them to move the little lever. And then these covers will come off. Now, as always, on this side, you've got your positive battery post. I'm going to get a rubber glove to cover the post once I have that exposed, because when you pull this out, you want to be really careful you don't hit your positive battery post. Now, lastly, the grommet on this side will lift, so you can just take it out. There are 2 13mm bolts here and here. Your car, if it's an M3 or an M4, you might have 3 bolts up here at the top. But there's 1, 2 13mm, 1, 2 in the front. I have a little bit different bolts. I'll speak to those in just a second. There are 2 short 13mm across the front and the 13mm in the back. So once you pull these covers off, you pull those 13mm bolts on both sides, lift the rubber grommet on that side, and slide the whole thing out. Now in my case, obviously, I do not have the default OEM bolts. If you haven't seen my video on my dress-up bolts, you should. These are really cool. So if you've changed your bolts out, use an Allen wrench or whatever the appropriate tool is to get your bolts out. In this case, it's a 6mm Allen to take these big bolts out. I love these kits. They look great. So go ahead and take your strut bar off, and then we're going to continue forward. All right, y'all, so I have the strut bar off. Obviously, don't forget that there's a 10mm bolt right here that needs to come out. It secures your strut bar to the reservoir. Pull the strut bar out and put it safely aside. It's a really expensive piece of carbon fiber, so put it someplace safe. Now, the reality is the instructions on how to measure and set up for these hose clamps could be used for any particular car. So the next phases are how to measure and install. But keep in mind, you could use these instructions generically across any car. Now, one thing I'm really going to stress, and listed in the video description, is a digital caliper. I bought a cheap digital caliper off of Amazon because I wanted to make sure I had the proper measurements on all of these. Now, because these hose clamps are very specific. I mean, do you see how much play we have here? So you see how much extra? I mean, so this pipe could be a 3-inch or it could be a 5-inch. I mean, it doesn't matter with these little worm drive hose clamps often because you have so much play in these clamps. Now, these new ones, and I'll show you them a little bit closer in here in just a second, are very specific. So I got a digital caliper and measured here and here, which were the same. So I have two that are matching on this side. I have aftermarket pipes, so their diameter is different than OEM. So if you have the OEM pipes, it's going to be a different diameter. My aftermarket are different diameter. This is the OEM pipe, so this is going to be one size. And then I've got an aftermarket front intake pipe. So I've got OEM sizes, I've got aftermarket sizes all the way around. So when I was talking and ordering these clamps, I had to be very, very specific in sizes. And so this wasn't just a generic kit. Yeah, give me an S55 kit and here are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clamps just right off, right? I had to be very specific and make sure to get the correct exact measurements. So the very first thing I've done is I've loosened up my hose clamps here and here. I'm actually going to take my intakes out. You don't necessarily need to do that. You can just back this intake collar off on this side and slide your hose clamp out. For me, just to make it easier so I can show you what we're doing, I'm going to take both intake pipes out. Okay, so let me do that and we're going to replace these two front clamps. All right, so let's get you caught up here. As you can tell, I have both of these rubber boots slid back and both of the hose clamps off. And your hose clamps should look like this. Now, these are simple worm drives as we've talked about. So just back them off and you'll have two of them, one here and one here. What I will normally do is I will take a plastic trim tool and I'll put a little bit of oil around on the pipes themselves and then on the end of a trim tool and then slide it up into the rubber boot, just to make it a little bit easier to come back, because these will usually adhere down in the heat really, really firmly, and it makes them hard to pull back. Now your pipes will have a little bit of give to them, but keep in mind you don't want to crank on these too hard, whether you've got the OEM plastic or aftermarket like these. So once you get this start to slide, you can also use that same tool, slide it in between to press on the boot. As you can see, it just comes back even a little bit further for me, right? That'll give you enough space to slide the hose clamps out. Now the existing, you can always unwind them all the way and then pull the band out, but the new ones are going to have to slide into the gap to fit into place. Okay, so now you're going to want to take both of these, and I think as I've said a number of times, it's really important that you measure very, very closely throughout this. So you would measure this side, and I've got an aftermarket intercooler, so I'd measure this side with the boot in place to get the correct measurement. Same thing on this side with my aftermarket pipes. I'd be measuring not the pipe, but the boot, where the actual band itself will tighten down. Okay, so let me grab both. Now I'm using a 2-inch on the pipes side and a 2 1/4 on the intercooler side. So I'm going to slide them into place with the drive nut in the correct orientation, but I'll show you that in just a second. All right, y'all, so we're kind of looking at halfway done because I wanted to show you what it looks like both completed and in process, right? So obviously we've slid our boots back. Now, when you fit these on, I've got my 2-inch clamp here, my 2 1/4-inch clamp here. I've gone ahead and pulled the bolt out on the 2 because it is really tight. And so I want to be able to get a little bit of extra room to put it back on. Now, when you do put the bolt back in, there's a tongue on one side and a little foot on the other, so make sure that they clamshell in together so they'll close completely just like that. Okay, so what I'll normally do is I'll fit both clamps on and then I'll fit my boot back across. I'll normally put on the intercooler side first, so it's absolutely snug. You can see where it fits against that ridge right here in the charge cooler. So I'll run the boot all the way up flush with this outside ridge. I'll slide this up and put it into place. Now I've also oriented them with the bolts down because I can get to them just as easily that way. Plus I make sure that the bolts are down and flush and out of the way. You can see the logo face up too, which is kind of cool. Okay, so slide the boot back into place, put the charge cooler side on first, and then go ahead and slide up the charge pipe side, get it secure into place. And then this is pretty much all done. All right, so all done as you can tell. Now it's going to be really important no matter what car you use this guide for to measure accurately, get a good caliper and send those measurements off to phase 2 before you order anything. Like I said, this is 2 1/4 and these are 2-inch. The 2 1/4 go on very cleanly. They're snugged down super tight. The 2 are very, very tight, so they're not flush. The band is not completely flush, but it's very, very close. So that looks really, really good. Everything is all secure there. So let's go ahead and check the air box and get that all done. All right, y'all, so as you can see, the plastic covers are back on, the strut bars are back on. All in all, this looks really, really good. I really like these clamps. I think they're gonna do a far better job than the standard hose clamps. And then plus, you know, you can get them in colors. So I really like that tie-in with the rest of the car. So go ahead and put your vanity cover back on, clean up your tools, and you're done. All right, y'all, so go ahead and clean up, put your tools away, and you can tell this is not a hard product at all. So thank you so much to Phase 2 Motortrends for making such a fantastic product. I'm really excited to have these in my car, not only for stronger clamps, but they color match too, which is honestly really cool. Only takes a few simple tools, and everything you need will be listed in the video description below, including the links to these various products. I really want to stress buying a cheap digital caliper. It's a good way to make sure you have the right measurements. You don't order the wrong thing, have to send it back and all of that. You get the right sizes straight out of the gate. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please make sure to click the like and the alarm button. It makes a huge difference to my channel. I would really appreciate it. And I have a ton of content coming that I can't wait to bring to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next project.